I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. We have a perfect pod. We're still coming down from an incredible Halloween. Just incredible. Andrew, are you still wearing your costume as we speak?
If you're talking about my culture, no. But I am dressed head to toe in blue and orange, with face paint, with an orange fuzzy wig on. But this is just how I roll every day. So no, I am not in costume. Are you?
People shrieking bing bong at you as you walk down the street.
I heard the Nets have a new slogan. Ding dong. Ding dong. Well, every time they win, man, it's catchy. I think it might take New York by storm.
Wow. The haughty Knicks fans roasting the poor, unfortunate Nets. The lower class across the river.
Small market team, man. It's funny how the Knicks don't have to do that much to take the entire city in the palm of their hands.
Yeah, they're doing a lot though. They look good. They look good. More on
Right.
the bing bonging ass Knicks later. Let's talk Halloween. Your favorite holiday of all holidays.
I love it. What'd you do, man? Did you go
Why
out?
do you love it? I'll talk about that. I'll share some deets. Why do you love Halloween so much?
I love the way we do it in America because it's attached to like young people dressing up in outfits, and it's kind of a celebration of ridiculousness that no other holiday has. According to Kyrie Irving, though, that would be Christmas, but we don't want to get into that before Christmas. But Halloween is a wonderful embrace of things that are bad to eat, but good to taste.
I will say, as a country that is often mirthless, Halloween offers a rare dosage of mirth. Like, you're right. People go out and wear bizarre costumes. They look like clowns, literal clowns. And everyone has a good time.
Flag fly. Yeah.
What I liked about this particular weekend, though, was that because Halloween fell on a Sunday, you had a lot of parties on Friday. You had a lot of parties on Saturday. And by the time Halloween itself came around, it felt like people were pretty much Halloweened out. So it had fallen naturally on a weekend. People who were like real Halloween day ones, like real druids, hit the streets on Sunday for like a final Halloween hit. And we were done with it. It didn't really have that odd feeling when it falls on a Tuesday where there's weekend parties, early parties, actual day parties. This was almost a typical weekend that was Halloweenized, if you will.
And I don't know how many New Yorkers are working Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 anymore. But, you know, there's a built-in psychology of that Saturday bridge and tunnel energy. I live in a neighborhood where it was kind of some aughts hip-hop people would say it was lit in my neighborhood, as Rob Pelinka would say, as he's scouting ex-Lakers players. But the nightlife aspect of Halloween only existed for like a brief moment in my life. Most of it is the memories attached to Halloween for me is of children. This is a holiday for kids, right? Like, of course, you know, old kids and young adults go out and party, but that seems like so far ago in my life.
I thought you liked Halloween because you're still dressing up in costumes. I've never been a big costume guy. I mean, I respect people who get dressed up. This is not a curmudgeon take. I just generally don't think about Halloween until a couple hours before, and then you're stuck trying to make things out of cardboard or paint whiskers on your face, as I did on Friday night when I went to a cat-themed party.
Oh, nice. Was Cookie's friend Kat Marnell there?
She was at a different party.
Weird.
You got to have
But it was
her
a
on
cat
because
party?
my party was the cat party, and there was no cat, but Cat was at a non-cat party.
So it
We'll
was
have
just-
her on soon to really
So
break
you
down
went-
New York being back.
So you went to Carl Anthony Towns' party at a Christmas restaurant.
I absolutely would have worn a cat jersey had I owned one. There were a lot of people wearing cat construction garments. I'm like, that's short for caterpillar, isn't it? Like, this is a perversion of a sacred feline theme.
Katino Mobley was fully in hard hat attire.
All we listened to was Cat Stevens and Super Cat.
And 8 Kit Kats. I have to admit, I'm a full-on costume snob. I probably hit the ceiling of costume snobbery. I have a specific parameter in which I judge costumes in, and it's annoying as fuck. It even makes me upset, but they can't have too much effort put into them. It has to be kind of casual. It cannot be entirely store-bought because that's just money. It cannot revolve around your vanity too much because that's a whole different holiday, New Year's. And it cannot be too current. Like if it's a meme, it bums me out. The perfect costume in my mind is Abraham Lincoln. That
Like,
is untouchable.
Because you just respect him and you're also 6'6".
And he's dressed nice. He has a suit on usually, a top hat. It's something that everyone can understand, and there's no way to look cool in it, but you can also look distinguished. It's hard to do a sexy Abraham Lincoln too. I know the whole like sexy Halloween thing has boomeranged around where people are embracing it now, which I love, because shaming that is a kink we don't shame. But Abraham Lincoln kind of like hits all the marks for me.
I can see this.
Yeah.
But are you referencing the president Abraham Lincoln or Abraham Lincoln vampire hunter? Because I could see how Halloween would lend some confusion to that distinction.
I don't think Halloween costumes have to be scary or bloody. And doing like I'm a vampire Donald Trump isn't that much better than Donald Trump. So it doesn't have to have any of that red face paint, which like kind of gets like drippy and smudged off in the first 20 minutes of a hang halfway through end beer. So like I like the straight up. It doesn't have to be spooky. These are just my
my costume was obviously not good at all. It was whiskers drawn on my face and a shirt from a store that has cat in the name. That was the entirety of that. When I went out for a drink a couple days later, on Halloween proper, I was not dressed in a costume at all. And I was outside a bar where you can go inside and have beer. And this girl had these crazy scars all over her face. And they were like indented. And I asked her how she did it.
yeah.
And she explained, and she painted a scar on my face. And it's this product that you can buy. I guess she just got it on Amazon or whatnot for like $8-9. And basically you paint it on your skin and then it contracts. So it pulls your skin inward. You can feel it,
It looks like a scar.
tightening up. And then you paint it a couple times and she put a little bit of like red makeup across it and then painted it another time. And it looked really authentic. So I just had that on, not even as a costume, just because I wanted to see how it worked. And I went into a store to get like, I don't know, some groceries for the next day or whatever. And the guy was like, "Are you okay, man?" Because he's seen me before. He's like, "Is that real?" I was like, "It's Halloween, man." Like, act like you've Halloweened before. But anyway, convincing. So for those of you who are slacking on your Halloween ideas, you can just get this stuff and paint it on your face and look revolting.
One of my
It's
homies,
a little hint.
one of my homies was walking by a movie set, and it was a horror movie, and he knew one of the makeup artists, and she had this product, It's like years ago before I'd ever seen it. And so he painted an upside down cross in his forehead and went to the bar. No one mentioned it. But then the next day, there was kind of a mini intervention being like, hey, is everything okay with you? We were talking and you didn't look like your best self. Like, if there's anything you need from us, like, let us know. And he was like, dude, it was makeup. It was so weird how no one brought it up. I even forgot I had it on. And he was telling me he was like so sad that people thought it was real and didn't laugh at him and instead took like the intervention route. He was just like, I must be doing something wrong. I'm like, hey man, I'm not here to judge your life. I'm here to judge your costume.
Look, no more swastikas. Oh, it's Halloween. It's Halloween. Okay, yes. Go on, Charles Manson.
What was the best Halloween costume you saw?
This would fall into the meme category, but I saw one of our friends in a Adele costume when she went all like Islander Adele.
Oh,
with
yeah.
the, Jamaican top and some plumage and sort of camouflage leggings. It was a accurate depiction of Adele. That was pretty good. But it does fall under the meme category though, because that was one of the more famed images from the last year. That was one that I just saw and was like, nailed it. That's funny.
I have to be clear about this. I think every costume is awesome. I enjoy the ones that don't need explanation, being like, well, have you seen the Squid Game? And I'm like, oh, you must be a character from it. You know, like that kind of thing kind of loses me. Also amazing. It's when someone shows up as like a Harry Styles meme or an outfit that he just put on 2 days ago, super cool. I just love the ones that are instantly recognizable, like a mummy.
A mummy's good.
Type.
Are mummies undervalued in the, mythical, scary character pantheon? Like vampires, Draculas, werewolves, weird creatures. Well represented. Zombies all over the place. What about mummies? Where's the love for the humble mummy?
Well, those you mentioned that are all more popular than the humble mummy are all kind of kinky, right? Like they all have movies that kind of work as like, oh, there's a little romance going on here. It's like a werewolf howling at the moon, passionate, vampires do their damn thing. But the Mummy franchise was very successful. I watched the Tom Cruise one that was kind of a flop. I hear you. Mummies have like a very limited emotional range when you can't like see that, and their whole vibe is like, not like the Portland Trailblazers exactly, but not unlike the Portland Trailblazers. So it's hard to like have like a change of. It's hard for a mummy to evolve in its own story, right?
Well, the problem with the mummy is it typically seems to have like hollow eyes, and it's just a husk. It's a wrap of tattered clothing and rags that is like cursing you and sending locusts in your direction, or
It's
bees
cool villain.
or whatever
Yeah.
those guys do.
Mummies have feelings too. Maybe they're not a villain to everybody.
Well,
Locusts
maybe
are
the
psychotic.
key here is to romanticize the mummy, make them hotter.
Right, but how would you do that? You would leave gaps where the butt is, where the wrap would go. That would be kind of sexy. I don't know. Like everyone appreciates a good butt. Shout out to Carol Lowry. But like, how do we make them? Is there a need for a sexy Frankenstein? Because Frankenstein is also falling behind the race of these ghouls.
Frankenstein's. I didn't see Frankenstein's one.
No,
Not
you
one.
didn't see one Frankenstein. You mean?
No.
I
not a
didn't
single
either.
Frankenstein's.
If I would have gone out, but I didn't because I'm a damn adult, I would have been Frankenstein for sure. I can't figure out the bolts in the neck though. How do you do that? Like it falls off if you tape them on. You want to glue those things on?
You know, it would be a really annoying costume to go as like a doctor, and then people are like, "What are you?" And you say, "I'm Dr. Frankenstein."
I hate that.
Just get get real fucking pedantic. Like,
I hate-
so you're not Frankenstein's monster. You're
Right,
Doctor. You're
right.
the actual Frankenstein, and then really explain it and berate them for getting their
Are you Jekyll or Hyde?
mythology wrong.
Right. This is yeah. That's kind of what I mean. It's like I don't appreciate clever costumes as much as some people. Like if they are word puns, like I'm a spelling bee, and you're a bee with like a letter holding a letter. I'm like, oh right, I get it. That's really awesome. Of course, very cool on the coolest holiday of the year. But like when if you rolled up as Frankenstein, I'd be like, fucking sick, man.
Yeah, I'm anti costumes that are like a rebus, some shit you got to figure out beneath a Snapple cap.
Yeah. Like I saw someone's mom that went viral win a costume contest in their office, and she just taped a bunch of gray swatches on her sweater, and it was 50 Shades of Grey, and I'm like,
No.
was there a mummy in the house? Obviously not, because the mummy would have won, right?
Like, was it a mummy with its ass out? That is the winning costume.
How can you get better? I mean,
Mummy with cakes.
mummy with that wagon. What? Oh yeah, like this is a perfect example. Mummy with their actual wagon hanging out, or a mummy with no wagon hanging out, holding a wagon. You want the wagon hanging out. You just want to go directly for the thing.
Unwrap the wagon. Always. When in doubt. Mummy.
The mummy's got junk. I mean, some
Look.
mummies must have. Is there one mummy or are there multiple mummies? Because there's not one ghost, right?
Well, it's always like King Tut, right?
Is it supposed to be King Tut? That's kind of fucked up.
He was a short king.
Well, they were all. That whole culture was short.
Short culture.
Yeah. That whole culture was built to survive, not like these tall ass dudes whose hearts have to do extra time pumping in the paint for the Utah Jazz.
Yeah. Like look at the Mummy. He existed for a really long time. He's still around. Unlike Abraham Lincoln, who died relatively young because he was tall.
Yeah, and who's a hater because he likes to kill things that live a long time. Dude, harsh.
If Abraham Lincoln was 6 inches shorter, never gets domed out there. Survives.
He does that. Top Hat does a lot of legwork for him. Like, he's tall by himself, but that top hat is like kind of a move. Kind of embarrassing, Abe. Got to be honest.
Well, I think we've pretty much broken down the spirit of Halloween.
Was there any shenanigans? Did you hear of any parties? Did you
There
go to
were
any
a zillion
parties?
I went to a loft party in Soho. Saw a lot of friends. It was good. Good, nice fun party. There was a ton of stuff going on, and in the words of Cat Marnell, New York is back.
It's crazy because in my words, my friend circle were all taking their kids out for trick or treating and going to sleep early for the next day of trick or treating. Different
of
worlds,
man.
man. I mean, shit. I was definitely glued to my Instagram feed trying to figure out what everything was, and I was like kind of surprised. A bunch of like very very cool young people that I follow on Instagram that I take tips from were like at this party, and I was like, oh, I miss my youth. I wish I was there. And Steve Aoki popped up. I'm like, what? Dude, we did this 20 years ago. It's like, ladies and gentlemen, Steve Aoki. And I'm like, yo, isn't this guy like 47 years old? Like, we saw him back in the Dim Mak days. Come on. With your boy Travis Scott.
Yeah, his V-necks are archival now.
Yeah, they're collector's items.
Coming from the shutter shade era.
Shout out to Steve Aoki, who still got that youthful energy, that joie de vivre. Was there any tomfoolery? Were any rules broken? Not you don't have to snitch. It's not Eric Adams shit. I don't know.
Oh, are you talking about the people who broke into China Chalet?
Or Red Egg. It was China Chalet.
China Chalet, yeah.
So China Chalet is not serving food anymore. It's just closed.
I don't even know it's there. I believe it's just closed. And yeah, people got into it. A few people went down there.
People
broke
love
in.
China Chalet, man. You don't want to barge into a mold infested rat party.
I don't know how physical the break-in was. I don't know if they actually had to, like, break a lock. I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble. I don't know.
Sounds spooky. It is a day for spooky things, so it's like a haunted house.
So what I heard was that people said they inhaled all kinds of terrible mold and asbestos, but it was fun.
Sounds fun.
Well, I mean, as an asbestos day one,
Yeah. Well,
that's what you want out of a Halloween.
It's weird, right? Because China Chalet, definitely one of the best clubs of our generation or in the last 20 years. It's not like architecturally something to look at. It was cool because it was just in a Chinese restaurant, right? It wasn't even a cool Chinese restaurant. It was your standard fare dim sum hall kind of looking place.
While that may be true, I would disagree because it did have a unique layout that the average bar or club does not necessarily have. It's not different from those, but the aesthetics were different and the way that it functioned was very cool. Not to get into China Chalet romanticism here, but you had your bar area, then you had a seated area, which was the dining room, and then
The
you
bar
had a
was
dance
very
area
nice.
in
It
the back.
overlooked Broadway. It had blinking lights outside. It was a cool place to chill.
And the dining room gave sort of it's not formal or stuffy, but it gave a very sort of classic faded grandeur vibe to hanging out in there.
It was a smoker's paradise. It was cool. People were politicking and chain smoking cigs and stacking their skateboards in the corner.
So people broke in, and I don't know what they did there, if they hung out or just looked at the place or partied. I have no clue. I don't have enough intel on this, but I do know that
Cool.
people got in there.
It's cool, man. It made me feel good about myself because people were investigating places like China Chalet and enjoying the performances of artists such as Steve Aoki. And I'm like, still got it. The things we did are still around. They're not done yet.
You are still in the streets.
Yeah, I
Digitally.
definitely am. Yeah. I was following.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of the streets,
These screams.
who will be the king of these New York streets? We find out soon, because today was the mayoral election. I battled throngs of Eric Adams faithful and Curtis Sliwa loyalists. Waited hours to get to those polls. I think I saw maybe 3 people voting in my local polling place.
It's the vibe. It's not a bing bong vibe at the polling stations. Let's just say that.
The vibe was off, but everyone was very cordial. They were happy to see voters, and they thanked me for voting and offered me stickers multiple times. So
So many.
I
Stickers.
felt like a participant in democracy and respected as such.
Yeah, man, it's a tough call because I don't think New Yorkers are against voting, but I think these two candidates don't really offer much in terms of enthusiasm. Somehow Eric Adams got through. In my opinion, the distraction of Andrew Yang kind of made it a free run for Eric Adams to just kind of get in there. Very unique set of credentials for him. Does not live in New York, lied about a bunch of stuff, ex-cop right after all the BLM protests. A very curious candidate to rise to the top as we were dragging Andrew Yang for everything he was doing. And then you have Curtis Sliwa, who's the day one cosplayer, who wears a beret and loves cats. So those are our leaders of this fine city.
I remember my main perception of the Guardian Angels, who were the Red Berets, and they came out in the 80s and 90s and were sort of vigilantes slash protectors and would ride around the subways
Cops are not to
looking
be
for
trusted.
trouble.
Yeah. It was when the
And I
cops.
just remember
yeah.
like Ice Cube berating them as like a slur. As I'm not going to use the slur, but the slurs in Little Red Hats. And every time I see Curtis Sliwa, that Ice Cube line with its slur pops into my head.
Hey, Ice
I
Cube.
don't say it. I don't say it. But that was my frame of reference of them from that era.
Ice Cube has transformed quite a bit in his life. So can Curtis Lewa. People change. You know, Ice Cube is anti-vax now. Is a front office person at an NBA. I mean, in a basketball situation. Is a Hollywood superstar. So it's been a strange trip for both these guys. You know, you can't think of Ice Cube without thinking of Curtis Lewa and vice versa.
I gotta say though, having a cop versus a vigilante, we should have that in every election. That should be it. Mm-hmm. No other candidates, just cop versus vigilante. Like, where do you fall? Do you believe the cops can clean up Gotham, or do you need some sort of chapeaued crusader? It's just, this is politics. Give me one of the two. We live here in Arkham, or no, that's the asylum from the monster movie Batman. But that's what I'm talking about, man. That's cinematic. Do you want vigilantes or cops? It's hard to say. And I'll say this: I couldn't pick between them. I liked them both so much.
It's just equally amazing. Yeah, it's like going to a Halloween party and seeing like one Dr. Seuss red character with the blue hair. Be like, where's the other one? If you have a cop, you just have to have a vigilante around somewhere. It's like, well, your opponent is a vigilante, right?
Yeah, it's a natural foil for a cop. A wannabe cop who works outside the system to clean the grime off this soiled city of ours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't say Eric Adams has endeared himself to New York more since he won the primary. He's kind of been out of sight. I saw him on New York 1. Someone threw a Molotov cocktail in a Bed-Stuy deli, and he came out and was like, "This is terrible." I'm like, "There's Eric Adams." I don't know, but
I mean, those tolls over the GW are obviously a bitch. Like, yeah. What is it, like $16, $20 these days? It's so expensive to come in from Jersey. I cannot blame him.
For all those people coming in for those China Chalet parties, they can save that toll money because China Chalet is closed. But, imagine your future in 3 years. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. The Knicks, world champions. Your boy Curtis Lewa, mayor. And Governor de Blasio. Oh, it's amazing. New York is in its peak.
I love how your boy Bill de Blasio came out smelling like a rose.
He sure did.
I brought the Knicks back. I restored order. We've got cops versus vigilantes. It's all coming up de Blasio. His mortal enemy was ousted from Albany. Mm-hmm. King de Blasio.
I mean, everything came up de Blasio. He was just like, "Oh, you don't love me as mayor? Here's your candidates." And we're like, "Ooh." He did get roasted in that Knicks video, but then again, that might work in his favor as well because that Knicks video is not aging perfectly.
Well, I gotta say, to your point about Eric Adams not ingratiating himself with the Democratic Party that decided inexplicably he was the one that should represent the non-Republicans, because he kind of just goes and hangs out with Republicans from like the Giuliani administration at steakhouses. It seems to be his main thing. Is like spotted with some seedy characters from 1985 while eating well-done steaks. So like he's doing something. He's a character. I'll give him that.
He's the hero New York needed. We thought it was Julius
He's eating
Randle.
steaks. Sorry. He's eating soy steaks in these establishments.
They're impossible steaks. Yeah, man. It's funny how you were just talking about going to Barclays Center, and Ground Zero for BLM turned into Ground Zero for anti-vaxxers, and it changes so fast, and it's just like it goes from Occupy Wall Street to a cop mayor in a blink of an eye, it seems. Not to say that I'm not even sure if you closed your eyes and just forgot about it. I mean, obviously policy is huge and the census is huge, and the way we figure out taxes and everything in this local, the local politics is important. But like, if you close your eyes, it's like, who's mayor again? I'm like, a cop who lies about being vegan, and everyone's like, that sounds fine.
Whose mortadell is it?
Yeah.
We never found out.
Well, it's
Never
his son.
found out
Come on,
who
it's
who
his-
actually owned the sausages.
The Premio Bandit is his son, with those kicks on the windowsill for balling out. Because I don't know if Eric Adams has that crossover. New Jersey hasn't had a team in a while. Shout out to Drazen Petrovic.
So yeah, I don't think there was a lot of people going to the polls today. Does that mean that if elderly people go out there and vote for Curtis Sliwa, does he have a chance, or is that 7-1 Democrat to Republican margin just too much for old Eric Adams, or excuse me, too much for Sliwa to overcome?
I was saying, like, Trump became president because we all kind of slept a little bit like a mummy. We went back into our casket a little too early, and some stuff happened on our watch. I'm saying Curtis Sliwa probably has his best chance of his whole life today. Not to
That's
say
true.
that it's going to happen, but this is his shot, right?
I mean, for me, I was not able to vote for either of them because I was too busy unsheathing my tattered rags from around my hindquarters
Yes. Only around the butt zone. Yeah.
as a caked up mummy.
My sunken eyes are wrapped up here, sir. I don't know, man. I can't really care about this because, well, I did see a bunch of Hell's Angel or Guardian Angels, different angels, much different angels.
Hell's Angels don't wear berets, from my understanding, but I guess it's conceivable.
They wear leather vests, and they're actually scary. Although all the Hell's Angels I've met in my life in New York have been pretty nice, but I know they're also organized criminals. But
They were rousted from the East Village, right? Did they lose their headquarters, or is that still there?
back in the day when I had an experimental noise band, we used to practice across the street from that Hell's Angels headquarters. And they were nice. We'd sit out on the stoop, and like some of us would have a cigarette, other people would chill. They would come across the street and hang with us every time. They'd just be like, "So how's it going today?" So I heard the story, and they would just like be those old New York City hardcore guys being like, "Well, back in the day, the street used to be a lot different." Awesome dudes. One of them worked security at Bowery Ballroom. He would always let me do stuff because he recognized me from the street. Do stuff as in like go backstage or like get a free beer from the back room. He was an awesome dude. And that is no longer, the house is no longer there. But in its demise, we heard about some wild stories and criminal activity going on there.
Ooh, what do you spill?
I mean, aside from the usual gambling and arms hiding or compiling, I think there was like some organized beatings. Like they set up like they shook some people down. I don't know. It was a dark, seedy den of debauchery, sort of like MSG.
I'm glad to hear that they were sticking to their roots, because in comparison, the Hells Angels in places like Montreal are extraordinarily fearsome. They are murderous. They're involved in like heavy narcotics trade. They are feared by everyone. Like I knew someone who was selling drugs up in Montreal, and the Hells Angels called him in to like meet with them. Like, okay, here's the deal. You work for us now. I'm like, wow, this is still going on?
Yeah.
Just calling people in and be like, you have two choices here. You work for us, or you stop selling the drugs that you're selling. And he started working for the Hells Angels. That easy peasy.
Is the movie Rounders about this? Sounds familiar.
Well, I think we're going to cover that on our pod, the Re-Roundables.
Oh, I can't wait. Can I be Edward Norton? Or can I be a different character? Well, we'll just have to find out.
Find out on episode 7.
Of the re-roundables.
The unreroundables. Other news here in New York City. How excited are you for NFT week?
Oh my God, I've been living in it, man. Did I not tell you? I caked and became a multi-millionaire selling JPEGs, bro. Okay, I love NFTs, man. I'm not gonna joke, so I can't joke too much about it. Shout out to NFTs. Hilarious. Yo, get rich.
I mean,
everyone should just get rich.
Sure. I don't really know what NFT week meant for New York City. I guess there were parties. There's one tonight that's at the Blonde. It's a Playboy party. I believe it's to launch Playboy NFTs. I don't know how saucy that will get. I am skeptical about the NFT community being one that I would prefer to socialize with, just in theory, but I speak out of ignorance. Maybe the NFT community is cool as hell.
I think they're as cool as anybody. I mean, I think gamers are kind of cool. I think NBA fans are right in there. There's no difference between like an NFT boy and like a Knicks fan. I mean, I'm saying they're both very cool. What about NFTs is not cool? Is it the computer? Because we all do NBA stuff on the computer. We just don't get rich.
I don't think it's the computer that's the problem. I think it's the cultural connections to gaming, to men's rights activism, to
Are you talking about incels?
libertarianism, to Bitcoin, to incels. And maybe this is incorrect, but these things all sort of seem to wrap around like internet-based libertarian financial, like it's fintech.
Yeah.
So they're all kind of, in my opinion, dipping into the same like Venn diagram of kind of person, but I could be wrong about that. That is my perception, though.
When steampunk was a thing, I thought it was like something that went back to a previous generation. But little did I know, it started with the Wild Wild West, the movie, the Will Smith movie, Wild West, I believe. It was like a new thing, and I was like, oh, okay. So it incorporates a lot of old ideas like Jules Verne, like neo-Victorianism, all that stuff, obviously. But the jump off was Wild West, the movie. And when I think about NFTs, I always think about like comic books, right? Like when comic books were no longer for kids, adults, like V for Vendetta, Sandman, Neil Gaiman, all this stuff about like exposing the world for its real thing, whether that be like a metaverse or corruption. It's like a combination of all the feelings of MAGA and progressives. Like that feeling is like very intoxicating, I think, to be like the truth is out there. Shout out to David Duchovny, Dr. D, graffiti legend, who kind of like is in the lineage of where the NFT movement is right now, in my opinion, and wanting to topple big ideas like the idea of the economy or the stability of like the way society is constructed in a virtual place, like banking and all that stuff, is fascinating. It's not boring at all. Like I try to keep up to date with it because like Shiba coin is kind of amazing, but I can't really understand it. It operates different than Dogecoin for sure, and I'm very interested in Shiba. But like this stuff is awesome, but also if you are seeing other people socially and you have beer once in a while, it doesn't really coincide with this kind of life, that NFT life.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think ultimately you can mock those people if you want, but you can also acknowledge that a lot of people who were into this got really rich over the last couple of years into NFTs and Bitcoins.
The loud ones.
Not. I don't mean everyone. I mean, but there are people who made a lot of money off of this. They're the same people who think Elon Musk rules, and a lot of those people made money because they believe in Elon Musk and invested in Tesla. So it goes both ways.
Yeah.
You can mock comic book guys, but most of them did not make a lot of money.
Yeah, and I think the ones I love to follow don't talk about money in terms of like I made a lot of money and I bought a house, and people who do, that's cool, whatever. But they talk about stabilization and destabilization as their main interest, and in order to make money off this, you need to cash out, and a lot of them won't cash out. And I think that's interesting. Like the GameStop guy who made $1 million in one day was like, I'm not going to have $1 million in a month, and I know it's going to go down to kind of where I was to start with, but we're trying to prove a point that the banking system is corrupt. The way people accrue wealth in the world is corrupt, and we want to destabilize it. And I think that's as interesting as a bunch of players in Boston fighting, you know? Elon Musk is a controversial guy because he throws a lot at you, and you pick and choose what you want. But at the end of the day, I think he's a really smart guy who has a lot of success in his prophecies and his philosophies. And whether we want to make fun of these people who are curious about all this stuff, like they're moving forward pretty fast, and it is the same as players in the NBA evolving, or Succession episodes being different than TV we saw 20 years ago. It doesn't seem like they're doing much, but in my opinion, a lot's happening in that world. So a bunch of nerds getting together talking about stuff is my favorite. That's cool, man.
You know, not everything is for everyone.
It's not supposed to be, right? Like Ben Simmons is not supposed to be for everybody.
No, not for everyone.
I'm not wearing a top hat because I'm a steampunk. I'm Abraham Lincoln, baby.
You think I'm a mummy?
Check out this junk. Have you seen a mummy like this before?
Oh, by the way, Joy of Basketball comes out
Wow.
a week from today.
Talk about
A week from today.
weirdos.
If you follow us on social media, we've been putting up some images from this incredible basketball tome. Obviously, you can pre-order from many places online. You can also get it at local bookstores. You can call up and have them order it if there's a brick and mortar place that you prefer. We're excited to have it out, and it's been really fun seeing the feedback from what we've kind of shown so far in terms of some of Andrew's amazing illustrations, some little chunks of text. But yeah, it was
Amazing
cool
text.
feeling the book in its physical form. I
Yeah.
thought that was an interesting moment as someone who has never done a book before. You have had a book before, so for you, I'm sure it was old hat.
I was wrapped in ancient gauze throughout the whole process, man. My eyes were sunken. My ass was out. I was just on cruise control. No, but it was a complete fucking team effort, man. Me and you sat down, we formulated an idea, we thought about what we wanted to talk about, and we did it. And I'm really proud of it, and it is spicy, it's funny, and it is a lot to take in. It goes really fast, and yeah, man, it is. Don't you always? Every listener wishes this pod could just be bound on paper made of trees forever on their bookshelf to open up the perfect pod in written form whenever they wanted to. We're giving you almost 300 plus pages of the perfect pod.
350.
Yeah.
350. You can round up, say it's 400.
Yeah, man. It is available November 9th. We will have sporadic events here and there to celebrate this book, where we will be. But yeah, anyone who's pre-ordered it, thank you so much. Like, if I can hit you all up with a message, I'll sit down and do that. And man, I'm excited.
One nice comment from a buddy of mine who works in the sports world, but he texted me and he said, I couldn't capture it in a tweet, but the prose flies, and then you've got to sit with the art for 15 minutes. I was like, perfect. That's great. That's a good way of that's what we wanted. We wanted the writing to be popping and fun and not drag, and we wanted the art and the charts that you made to be stuff that isn't fleeting. And I think hopefully we nailed that dynamic. We kind of like reversed the way that things would typically like interact with a reader. I think that's cool.
Right, and I think me and you came up with the idea of the encyclopedia as kind of a way to play off of a resource material where it's not necessarily meant to be taken in from A to B from start to finish. It's something you can pick and choose and go back into. It's like, what did these guys think of chuds? Check out our chud entry, and you'll find out exactly what we think about them. And hopefully it's something that will live beyond like, yeah, I read that book last winter. It's something that you can always go back to and be like, did they have a chart about how the Kardashians were actually a blessing to everyone they encountered? I got to check that out again. But it's like if I can offer a poor analogy, it's like a well-rounded starting five. You have the scorer, you have the genius defender who does the dirty work, you have the chud, you have the pretty player, and you have Lance Stevenson, who will make you dance.
Yeah, I think I agree. To me, we didn't want to make it too serious, but we wanted to convey what we really, really do love about basketball. And I don't think we intend on this being one of those books that, quote unquote, starts debates. That's not our intention.
No.
I think it was more sharing our ideas and presenting them, not necessarily trying to persuade people to agree with them, but just presenting ideas, not saying this guy is better than that guy, and therefore you should argue for or against that concept. Like pick your side. We aren't doing that. That's not really what we love about it, the sport itself. It was more just kind of thinking about how the game has changed over 25 years and the players who were forgotten in the past and where it's headed now, and trying to sort of be cartographers for that last 25 years since, the logo Allen Iverson was drafted in 1996.
Yeah, we're not trying to bait you. There's no we're not trying to reel you in. It's sort of like watching a movie, a thriller starring Harrison Ford, and the title is The Husband Did It. It's out there. It's a joy of basketball. We fucking love this game, and we explain in every single detail why we love it. And it was fun.
It is as literal as The Undoing Season 2 in Innocent Man.
The joy of basketball. Right.
Joy.
But yeah, I think we will do more content related things around the joy of basketball. We'll have some interviews. We'll do it right here on the pod, and we'll talk about this book more. But for now, November 9th, and we are stoked to have it in this world.
Yeah, and yes, thanks for the support from everyone, and we really appreciate it, and are arrogantly confident that people will find it at least somewhat entertaining and engrossing. Haughty about it, really.
Yeah, we're playing the little hero ball right now. It's a bit of a heat check, so maybe we'll just catch fire and never miss again. I don't know. It's hard to tell.
And shout out to Deezus, who did the amazing forward for the book, and that was like a great, generous gesture on his part. And also thanks to the people who did the blurbs, which were Pablo Torre, Sarah Silverman, and Mina Kimes. Like above and beyond the Call of Duty from all of those. That was great. So sick. Anyway, moving on to the sport of basketball, which the book The Joy of Basketball is coincidentally about. NBA season. We're
okay.
So that's the joy of basketball too. Mummy with junk. So the season, we're 10% of the way in. Like,
oh my God, really?
Still
It's
early.
that much?
Still early, but we're
done. No.
Oh my God.
Sad.
I mean, regular season, but 10th of the way. Still too early to really buckle down on on the kind of truths that you would find in the book The Joy of Basketball. But
Wizards
nonetheless,
#1. Let's go.
nonetheless, there are some interesting things happening in the NBA. The Celtics rebuild
Trust the
seems
procedure.
to have slipped on a patch of baked beans.
Oh,
They're currently 2-5. Offense lousy, defense terrible. What has gone sour in the bean?
explain this to me, man. If you're supposed to be Abraham Lincoln, why are you so short? Why are you green? And why is your beard orange? You're supposed to be one of the greatest Americans of all time. It just doesn't match up, man. You got a wrinkly face.
Are you hunting vampires or chasing the end of the rainbow, sir?
Or like on a murderous rampage. Not sure, but it is a it is a horror show up in the Beantown.
Got him.
Woo! This
It's
is
a movie, a horror movie.
none of this is shocking, right? Like, I hate to. No, I love it. I love to be the one to say this. We've been saying this for 3 or 4 years.
Just pretend to say that you hated it.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh, it gives me great pain. It hurts me. Andrew Quo. I didn't want to say that the Boston procedure should not be trusted, but here I am, mournfully conveying that Boston is waist deep in the sewer system of the Eastern Conference. It brings me no joy.
Listen, I love Newberry Comics. I love Clam Chowder. I love Slapshot. I love this band, The Swirlies. I like Helium. I like all these cool things that came out. Lemonheads were cool. I like all these things. But I have a playful kind of back and forth with Boston media in the NBA and them like taking shots at players who I don't think really deserve shots. And it's all fair game, right? Like, we're all doing a thing. It's like, think about this point forward who's actually good. Maybe he's bad. Just like drilling these ideas into our collective heads, except the ideas that Boston's in shambles and they have 2 Allen Houston players who are kind of redundant and a really salty dude named Smart.
Well, you know, in the past years when Boston has been a good team, guys like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have been contributors. But for the most part, the quality of those teams was because of players who are better than them and also a collective depth. Because they're solid young players. They're very good scorers. They're creative with the ball and trying to score.
They're
They don't
bouncy,
really
they're
pass.
active. Yeah, they're
But
cool.
They're cool. They're cool, fun players to watch, and they can both have games where they drop 45 points, and you say he just took a leap. There it was.
Yep.
We watched his leap. He's been making these leaps for years, and he's still leaping.
Yep.
Look at the leaps. So yes, they are cool players. But when you look at the team's success, like, well, they had Kyrie, who is a much better player than Tatum or Brown.
The best
they
point
had
guard
a
that
younger.
franchise has ever had.
I agree. Who's better, Bob Cousy?
That's not even the NBA.
But they had guys like Al Horford, who was younger at that time, and an all-star, and they had Gordon Hayward, who is at least a smart player. I don't think he's better than those guys, but they had Gordon Hayward. They had Kemba Walker before he hurt his knee, and those teams were good, but they weren't this team right now, because this team is built around 2 pillars who are, as you said, a bit redundant. They're sort of one-dimensional. This isn't to say that they are bad defensive players, and Tatum is definitely disruptive off ball, and they can do some things, but you look at this team and you're like, well, why would this team be very good? They don't have those other, excellent players around them, or players who necessarily even complement them in the best way. I don't think they're this bad though. I think they're just mediocre.
I agree. They're not this bad. It's early. Like the East is amazing and fascinating this year, and we've yet to see the water level. But the Celtics are not this bad. But they're not. I think they're around the play-in, right? The construction of this team is curious to me. If we just go down some players, like Kemba Walker's compromised now. He's a bit older. He's had injuries. I think he's a 60% of the electric Kemba we saw in Charlotte. You still want a smart player like him on the court, albeit he was expensive. So they cut him as a sunk cost. All right, then you replace him with Dennis Schroeder, downgrade, I think. And then Al Horford comes in, a basketball genius, but like a little past his prime. He was on the Atlanta Hawks with Millsap, right? Like players who were kind of a generation ago. Kyle Korver was on that team. Like, so I don't know what they want to expect from him other than some guidance, some nice games. He's a good player still. Downgrade. Cantor. I don't know what they were expecting from Josh Richardson. This is a worse team than it was last year.
Look, I think Al Horford is a big upgrade. Not to get into the Sixers right now, but when he was criticized as being the team's problem 2 years ago and being washed up,
we are going Sixers.
To me, it was just clearly untrue.
Sure.
Al Horford is a good player. He's been a good player for a long time. He was fine on Philly. He did not fit well with three other big men in the starting lineup, but when he played center, he was good. He was not bad in the limited minutes he played for the Thunder last year, and he's been good so far this season. Like Al Horford's still a good player. He's just long in the tooth.
And yes, and it's been a few years since all that stuff, and he's still good. He's had some nice games. He's a nice player, but like, if you're trying to build a team like this,
he's leading the NBA in blocks this year.
It's very early, but yeah, he's a good player, right? But like, I do think he helps that team. But like, I think the point of view with Boston, I enjoy this part, has a lot to do with their confidence in their two top players. And this is Marcus Smart's whole point last night when he came out directly in opposition to the point of view of the team. It's like every team knows we value these two forwards. Everyone's just standing around watching them ISO, which is true. The way to beat the Celtics is to just let Jason Tatum score. And then you got them, kind of, If he drops 30 on you, you have a good chance of beating them. Because he doesn't share the ball. He doesn't produce that many points around the court. He's an isolation player. And it's hard for him to do his thing and Jaylen Brown to also do his thing. Because they both want to write the chapter on chuds, right? And there can only be one chapter, legendary chapter, about chuds. And
the one issue is that thus far this year and maybe last year, Jaylen Brown is a better scorer than Jason Tatum in terms of just being a lot more efficient.
I think
this year
head-to-head,
so far,
yeah.
they're close, but I think to me, Jaylen Brown as just an ISO scorer has gotten better and more polished than Tatum, who is good. And again, as we said, these guys are both totally capable of dropping a shit ton of points. But Tatum is leading the league in field goal attempts while shooting under 40% and something like 25% from three.
And he's not that bad. He'll get better.
He's a good shooter. He's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
And the team will succeed more when they're like leading chucker is not missing that many shots. Like it's inevitable that he is going to play better, and as a result, that will lift up the overall performance on the team because he has an undue influence on it due to his volume.
Absolutely, yeah.
But to your point, you have a lot of good players like Smart and Horford, and I like Robert Williams too. I like those guys.
Yeah.
And their starting lineup has been okay. That's not really the problem. But they become predictable.
Yep.
And you see them in the fourth quarter, and it's Tatum just trying to get shots off over and over. He's shooting 25% from the floor in the fourth quarter this year, I think.
They had a monumental meltdown last night. A Doc Rivers-esque, as they say in basketball lore now.
Celtic legend, Doc Rivers.
That's right. I was watching some people talk about Jason Tatum on YouTube, as and they were saying maybe he won't fulfill his promise because he doesn't want it enough, and he needs to put it all together in his head in order to be the top 5 player that they've been saying he was for the last 3 years since he's been 15 years old. And I bristle against that because I think I have empathy for Jason Tatum. He is exactly who he is. A borderline, maybe always all-star, who's really good, who reminds me of Jerry Stackhouse and Allen Houston, who are also great players. But like to ask him to be Paul George is unfair of Jason Tatum. He doesn't have that skill set. It's not that he doesn't want to be a passer, defender, and scorer. Yo, man, I would love to dunk a basketball. I really want to dunk a basketball, but I've never been able to dunk a basketball, and that has not hindered me in my life. Other things have, but not dunking a ball has. And like, I think asking players to be perfect versions of what you think they could be is like what The Joy of Basketball, the book we wrote, is about, right? Like, Jason Tatum's a wonderful player, but you have to let him be him.
I think that's correct. And look, don't want to overstate the the influence of the Boston media mafia, also known as the Little Green Hand,
Wow.
and say that it
You
is
said it.
we can attribute what's happening with Tatum to them. But I do think this idea that he needed to blossom into a absolute superstar, into a top 5 player who's going to get the ball and just give you buckets over and over and over,
It's unfair.
maybe was not the right trajectory for him. It's not that he isn't skilled, but when you say to someone, this is your job, you have to go and get buckets for us on every play, and like, well, I'm not great at getting to the line.
Yeah.
I like taking a lot of mid-range jumpers.
I go cold
but if you say
sometimes.
so,
Yeah.
but if this is what's required for me to be the player you want me to be, to be Kobe, to be the Mamba, that I'm the one who's got to get the ball and take us to the promised land by my hand alone, maybe that's not the ideal, outlook for Jason Tatum. Maybe Jason Tatum can be, one of the guys on the team who can make plays. It doesn't necessarily mean, okay, me and Jalen are going to take turns, and whoever gets the ball first is going to go at their guy and try to get us the bucket. I think Smart's making the right point. He's like, we've got good guys. We're just standing around.
Yep.
Like, it doesn't have to be you.
Yeah.
And he was very candid about it.
I love
this
Marcus
is stuff
Smart.
that's this has been happening with the Celtics for a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're talking about how Tatum is a good player, but when you say you have to be Michael Jordan, and we demand that you play like that because otherwise you're a disappointment.
Yeah.
You're kind of setting him up to be, different or maybe less effective than he could be if you let him like comfortably, kind of slide into the best role for the team.
We saw this in recent memory in this generation with Paul Pierce. He came out of the draft and we're like, oh, we got a great one. He might be an all-star. He is an all-star. And then the team couldn't really do anything because his running mate was Antoine Walker, who shared a lot of his proclivities on the court, or tendencies. That's not the right word. But like they like to do some of the same stuff on the court, isolate, score, mid-range jumpers. Paul Pierce was awesome. The only reason Paul Pierce was saved in the minds of like historical eyes is because they added maybe the best player of his generation, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen. Rajon Rondo was the 4th. Rondo Celtics won the championship. And that kind of saved his legacy. But Paul Pierce was kind of frowned upon in Boston as like some guy who didn't want it enough as Michael Jordan. And he had everything there, and he just had to put it together in his head. And we forget that they added the perfect player in Kevin Garnett in his prime. And Tatum could use a player as good as Kevin Garnett. He can surely use Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart and Time Lord and Horford, who are all very good players that help every team. But like every every player like Tatum needs a hand. Even LeBron James, clearly the best player of all time, Scottie Pippen, who we'll talk in a second, handed Michael Jordan his whole career.
Well, you're right. I think when you look at players who are isolation scorers, you need a support system of guys who do all the other stuff
Yeah.
in order for it to work. You know, with Kobe, you look at that team's front line when he won titles
That
post
was a
Shaq.
nasty team. Yeah.
It's like it was. I mean, it was insane.
It was nasty. Yeah.
You had Odom, you had Gasol, you had Andrew Bynum pre-injury. Like that. That's one of the best front lines in NBA history.
Yeah.
So you could say these guys are going to defend. They're going to rebound. They're going to score hyper efficiently. They're going to. You've got good passers in both Powell and Odom, like great passers for big men.
Point forward.
And they're going to do all the stuff that you don't really feel like doing, and you can just go for yours, and it's actually going to work in the context of this team. So with someone like Tatum, you're like, yes, we're going to need a Draymond. We're going to need a Garnett. We're going to need
a Simmons.
So we need a Ray Allen. You've got to put the guys around him that do the things that he doesn't necessarily do in order to say, you've got one job, and it's to go get buckets. On nights when you go off, we will win. On nights when you're okay, we've got a good shot of winning.
Yeah.
On nights when you're off, we might actually get a couple of those too.
Yeah, yeah. As a Knicks fan, I'm glad that they are sticking to their two guys because they don't pose a threat. Now that the Knicks are contenders again, but like they're not. They're not. I'm joking. But you know, as a Knicks fan, I don't like to see the Celtics dominate. I don't like to see the Sixers dominate. Pacers. So like watching Boston kind of full of hubris is fun for me because I think we have a chance against them on any given night. Opening night we took them to double OT. Awesome. Playing down to their level. But
Knicks did what they're supposed to do.
yeah.
Play-in team. They beat a playoff team who beat a play-in team.
Exactly.
Handle your business and move on.
Exactly. Bing bong. I also think if Boston decides at some point to move one of their two guys for someone who complements one of their two guys, the East might be in trouble. That might be a better team if you can keep Time Lord, if you can keep Marcus Smart, who is a player every team could use. That would be interesting. I mean, but until they do that, there's really nothing to see in Boston.
Speaking of nothing to see.
Go on. Can't
I was like, well,
wait.
what else we got to talk about? I'm like, well, how does this fit in? Speaking of nothing to see, are you wearing the new Oklahoma City Thunder ghostly city version of their uniform?
Listen, Ben, I've been waiting to tell you this. I died in 99 when the Knicks went to the finals. I'm a ghost. So I've been wandering this earthly plane, searching endlessly between heaven and hell, because when Patrick Ewing went down and Marcus Camby rose to the peak of NBA stardom in the finals, it was the best moment of my life. There was nothing else to live for, so I'm wearing all white, possibly in my Oklahoma City new alternate jersey, which is also white on white. And you may see me, but I'm not here.
How are you feeling about the city jerseys this year? The Knicks have one that got better reviews than last season's effort.
I like last season.
People really like the Philly Spectrum one. There was a Hawks yellow one. I think a lot of them are based on, of course, retro jerseys.
Yeah.
The Raptors brought back the large Tyrannosaurus image that goes across
Some
the front.
OVO shit. Yep. I like it. It was a cohesive idea. I thought they were really nice. To see them all together, I'm like, oh, right. They had an idea and then they went into it, which is like refining and beautifying classic signifiers of each team. Oklahoma City's tougher because they started from nothing, so it's hard to make something from nothing. I don't know why there's not a storm cloud on there. But they had so much potential just to be like a gray, cloudy, ominous presence. But it looks cool. I am tired of just panning new designs for everything. if we look at those jerseys objectively, they're all pretty nice, right? It bums me out that the New York color scheme is leaning orange because I really love the royal blue of Knicks culture. But whatever, it looks sick.
Looks good to me. I mean, I think the new Brooklyn ones are awesome. They have a new version, like the Canarsie one, like the Bed-Stuy, and this one was inspired by Necro. That one's pretty cool. The Flatbush version, which is dedicated to the bushwhackers and special ed. That was nice.
The
Into all
QBC
these.
one, dedicated to Big Noid. That one was great.
I mean, but we're talking about Brooklyn here. You know,
Oh,
the
my
Nets.
bad, my bad.
They are from the borough of Kings.
Yeah. Which one was... People were mad at the Celtics one because it reminded them too much of the classic normie Celtics jersey. But I don't know. You can't have it both ways. So near my house, it's kind of rough. But, you know, everything kind of like gets fancier to everyone's various speeds. And there was a new storefront that opened up. New glass, new development, everything. And a Wingstop is opening there. And there was graffiti being like, boo, we don't want this. I'm like, oh, I don't know what you guys want because the community here really wants this. I think Wingstop would be very popular on Delancey Street. We don't want to turn it into like a Butcher's Daughter or like a Sweet Green. That would upset people just as much. So with this Celtics jersey, I'm like, I don't know what you guys want, because if it's a deviation of the classic logo, you guys are going to be like, how dare you besmirch the hollowed identity of the green, the tiny green hand. And if it's too normal, you'd be like, well, we've seen this before. I'm like, I don't know. It looks nice to me.
I like them. I just wanted to see if the typographical disaster that are the New York Knicks had finally done
God.
something to
Oh my God.
to get your approval and your jaded gimlet eye for design.
Dudes, just Google. I had someone roll up to me at a bar, and they were like, I heard you talking shit about the typographic logo of the New York Knicks. And then I Googled it. It's a disaster. I'm like, look up the 2019 jerseys. I don't know what's happening there, man. They got to get some interns who are starving for more gruel to just space those letters out, man. But it looks good now. All you have to do is like spend like another 20 minutes doing it.
Yeah. So, speaking of bad looks,
Your
is a
transitions
better segue.
are, wow, fast break, man. De'Aaron Fox over here.
this one's great today. Speaking of bad looks, Philadelphia fans,
Speaking
who
of,
I love and respect,
Speaking of mummies' asses, Philadelphia fans.
who I love and respect, They, as an arena, as a people, as a culture, as a community, lustily cheered Damian Lillard, chanting, "We want Lillard," or "We want Dame," or something along those lines during yesterday's game, in which the Portland loser was trounced by the Sixers B unit.
he's
But
satisfied
nonetheless-
just play. He's a participation trophy guy, man. It's all good.
He's 10 toes deep.
Doesn't want to
Portland.
win. Respectability.
Sorry, what? What? Oh, I blacked out there for a second. I was napping.
I saw somebody on Instagram in a Portland Trailblazers Halloween costume, which was the Sleepy Time Bear, and it was awesome. He was just like on a couch in his party with like his hand over his fake tummy. But the thing that annoyed me the most was he had a Sleepy Time tea box that said Sleepy Time Bear on it in front.
Oh,
I was like, yo, man, this is what I'm talking about. Just wear that mummy with the ass gone from the dressing. That's all you have to do.
trust your audience, unlike the fans at a Sixers game.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I understand people cheering for Damian Lillard, but because they want him on the team. But to me, that's lame. I'm sorry, it's just lame. Like, I don't think you should boo everyone on an opposing team, but like, you're cheering for an opposing player because you want him on your team.
That's some Knicks
have a
behavior
li-
from the 90s or the aughts. Yeah, that's not a good look.
No, that's what I mean. Like, you're the number one seed in the East last season. Have a little self-respect.
I know. Well,
Like,
especially
come
since
on,
they did
man.
this to themselves. I'm like, you guys drove yourself into a frenzy here, man. Like, oh, you had it. You cannot handle prosperity. A lot of people can't, and I know this behavior very well, man. I've been a Knicks fan my whole life, and yo, cheering for other players to come to your team is like kind of funny. I get it, but like the Sixers are good to go, man. They were a number one seed.
It's just thirsty.
Yeah. And
It's
Lillard.
like you're a mummy.
Yeah.
And you wake up and you've been sleeping because someone showed you a Portland game for centuries. And you're like, I am fucking parched. Was that kind of thirst?
Is there a breeze in here, or is there no wrapping on my buttocks? But
yeah,
yeah.
To me, and I don't, it's not that big of a deal. I can't say I care about it. I just didn't think it was cute. I'm like, root for your fucking guys. Root for the guys who are on your team. You don't have to root for some schmo who comes in with the Sleepy Time Bears and say, yay, Damian Lillard. Like, get off his dick. Like, come on. Seriously.
As someone who enjoys the NBA and who doesn't root primarily for the Sixers, I do. I want them to do well. I think they're cool. Now that when people, like writers, bring up this, like, Simmons practice, but does he want to play enough? I'm like, oh, we're done with you. The NBA is in full swing. We're a tenth of the way through the season. We are done with this. Let us know when something actually happens, because building this stuff was like a summertime tradition, but like we're wearing our mummy outfits now, and we got the North Faces on, and we've moved on. Like I saw some reporter who's been kind of fueling this fire, just like throwing a little Simmons bait out there, and I'm like, yo, there's a lot of bing bonging going on. We don't have time for this.
Yeah, and I don't know. My thing again, not a big deal, not a big deal. I just think it's corny behavior. But I will say, trying to encourage a player from another team to, quote, come to your team when that entails trading your own players for him versus free agency is not something that I find tasteful. Like, you're there to root for your guys, and that a trade for Dame Lillard would not only send away Ben Simmons, and you can have whatever feelings you want about him, but probably other guys like Tyrese Maxey, who you're cheering for. I just think that's kind of gross. If we're talking free agency, cheer. Say we want you here. Come join the winners. But Dame Lillard doesn't have any choice in the matter here.
Yeah.
If the team wants to trade him, they can. They may not because he has, such leverage as the face of the franchise. But in order to acquire him, you are asking the team to deal guys that you were rooting for in that same day, who are wearing the team's uniform that you were in the stadium to support. Not into that. And just overall, I don't have the same appetite for like trade proposals that I did years ago. I'm like, sure, we know that's going to happen. We understand the econometric value of players and how the salary cap works, but it's just kind of gross to me. Like these guys are like regular dudes who don't have much control over where they play. I remember when Patrick Beverley got traded a couple times in the offseason, people were mocking him.
Oh, he's good.
Like, ha ha ha,
Yeah.
You're getting traded around the NBA, loser. I'm like, he's got no say over this. Yeah. This is like a hazard of working in a environment that is really binary. You've got players who can try to force their way to teams where they want to go and are free agents at times, and you have other guys who just kind of exist at the whim of where superstars want to go or where GMs want to send them or what ownership wants to do. I don't know. I just kind of have detached myself a bit from that kind of hot stove league talk. If you want to say, could the Sixers get something for this? I'm like, yeah, I guess theoretically, but I just don't have that same interest in like phantom GMing that I did years ago.
I still quite love it. I think not
Well,
to
it's
get
because you're a really, really bad person. You're you're like a mummy whose ass is covered.
I am not a kink shamer. That's not what I am. You can have your ass out and you can have trade proposals forever. I don't care. It doesn't affect me. That's a way people experience politics and sports and everything. And the reason I love this stuff, we do a pod about it, is like at the end of the day, this stuff doesn't matter. Like politics matters and it's the same behaviors. It mirrors each other. So wishing for your enemy's downfall is like a uniquely distinct thing that I think humans either get over or they don't. Like it took me a lot of years to not wish for the worst of what I thought my enemies were. I don't root for like the Red Sox to lose anymore, no sin bin, because I just don't care. It's like those players, Pedro Martinez, no sin bin, Manny Ramirez, no sin bin, Oil Can Boyd, they're all awesome players. I found myself to be sabotaging myself when I rooted against them, just because I was supposed to as a Yankees fan, no sin bin. But I feel the same way about the NBA now. It's like if Sixers fans want to see the demise of their enemy, in this case, the enemy is coming from inside the house, in their point of view. Ben Simmons, right? He is the one preventing them from success. Okay, that's cool. I really bristle at when it gets too ugly, like MAGA or, whatever. Like when it gets personal, when there's violence, when there's ill will, sucks. But, if you're a Sixers fan, you're like, well, what can we do in this situation? Who could we trade him for? Is this salvageable? I'm like, cool, this is just being a fan. This is all right? If you have a need to see suffering for your own story, then for sure I just can't pay attention too much to that stuff, and the Simmons stuff crossed over into that territory. But like cheering for Lillard to come to the team, to throw out trade proposals, like I don't know, it seems like part of being a fan, right?
100%. I'm saying for me that just doesn't have the same appeal that it did, because these are people. They are young guys who often do not have any control about where they live or their work environment, and saying, hey, our team doesn't think you're that good anymore. You've been a disappointment, and you're going to be going to another city. You're going to play with a whole bunch of other guys, and like tough luck. I think that sucks, and it is a necessary part of basketball. And I think trades are fun and interesting because of how they rearrange the league.
Yeah.
But I don't have that same like enthusiasm for saying, well, what if you traded this guy and this guy and you added some picks? Could you get him in return?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just not what I enjoy about the game at this point.
Well, to that point, I think what I've realized in the last few years is something that has orbited Philly for quite a while. Sam Hinkie, the God, who created this wonderful thing that Philly has right now as a gift, had ideas that we all understood, but he put it into action, which was value the draft, try to find stars, invest in these affordable contracts if we're going to talk about a salary cap. Like if you invest in the lottery, good things could happen to you more than trades do. And we're seeing in the NBA now, like I agree with you. I don't reside in trade proposal worlds as much as I do like how do they build next year? How do they get good players? How do you get a Josh Giddey? How do you get like players, Scotty Barnes? Like how do we land one of those? We don't need to trade our good players for another star. We can maybe draft Scotty Barnes and have electricity in the building again and pair him up with hip hop legend Fred VanVleet, sign and wait for Pascal Siakam to get healthy. Like that's exciting. You don't need to trade Pascal Siakam, who was on the table for a lot of trade people this summer. Like you don't have to do that anymore because the draft is extremely valuable and malleable, right?
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm actually not shaming anyone at all who is into
I get
trades.
you.
And
Yeah.
like just wants to talk trades. Like, what if this guy and this guy and this guy? I get it. You're putting puzzles together that include salaries and talent and contracts. It's fun, and I've enjoyed doing that in the past. I just kind of am over it. I'm just getting old and soft, and now I think about these lads as people who've got to go and pack up their bags and go somewhere else. I'm like, I don't really want to root for that. Things are going to happen. I don't need to speculate too much. I can tell you what I think after it happens. I don't need to invest in fictionally trading guys around. Whatever.
But
Again,
sometimes it works better,
as you
right?
said, it's 100% part of the game and part of fandom. I'm by no means even criticizing it. I'm saying, you know what? Not my favorite part of basketball right now.
But and I agree. And the counterpoint I would have to that is like, if we're in the era of player empowerment more, and we have kings like James Harden and Ben Simmons and Anthony Davis telling everybody like, we are actually in more control than you think we are. Like, we can dictate what happens to our lives as young men who only have a few years in them to play this game at a high level. Like, it's cool. I think James Harden's more happy in Brooklyn. And, you know, if you're a JJ Redick level player, sometimes you're at the whim of, you're not as powerful as these stars are. But like, maybe it's a cultural shift, and Anthony Davis, I think, is certainly happier in Los Angeles than he was in New Orleans, right?
Yeah, but I also would take a similar stance with the power of superstars, and I don't have an issue with it. I think guys should be able to muscle their way to wherever they want to go, but I also have sympathy for the guys who are on the Nets and the players who help build that team up to respectability. And then Harden says, you know what? I want to play with the Nets. I'm like, Karis, the rest of you guys,
I know. Yeah.
time to move on. And like, yeah, but we've got KD and Kyrie now. We're going to win a title. I'm like, yeah, you're going to go play in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And look, again, everyone understands this is a business and this is how it works. But I also have sympathy for the pawns in the little guys when superstars say, actually, I want to play for the Lakers. And then the response is, Lonzo, Ingram, Hart, you got to go somewhere else because
Julius
we
Randle.
got someone coming in.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's kind of just, and we did a lot of thinking about this in our book. Like, what is baked into the NBA that we have to accept? Like, as an American, I accept I have to pay taxes. I don't like to pay taxes because money is valuable to me, and to have the idea of it going to somewhere where I don't know what someone's going to do it, taxation without representation. Our whole country's built off this idea. I pay my damn taxes, and I think it's baked into being a participant of our community. And with the NBA, like, I don't think Zion Williamson wanted to go to New Orleans. I think he really wanted to come to New York. And we're kind of seeing that play out. As a young man, you're thrilled to just be in the NBA. You put on that hat and you're just excited to be in the moment. But quickly we're finding out that like the draft is grosser than trades. Like, I think it should be a free agency, and to send these young men to places where they don't want to go is like not perfect. We don't have to do that. We can still have an amazing league without doing that. But is it baked into the thing? Do we just have to accept that? Not as parody, but is it a tax?
Well, there are other solutions that could be tried.
For sure.
But,
for sure.
It's also, how do you create a system that has ostensibly parity between markets that are anything but fair? How do you do that? Is it going to be based on luck? Is it going to be based on your willingness to overpay for a rookie? I don't know. And
I love how he took luck out of it, though. That was so cool. He was like, I'm going to make this luck work in my favor. He was counting the deck.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you just have to say, this is going to be an imperfect system. And even though it would be more fair if teams could just bid on rookies. We do know that there are other vectors here. There's sneaker money. There is endorsement money from various brands. There is lifestyle. There are cities that are more conducive and friendly towards like the lifestyle of a young black man than other ones.
There's second families in Atlanta holding it down.
You just can't take those variables away and say,
Absolutely.
okay, well, Minnesota, you're just going to have to pay people 3 times as much, and it still might not work.
Yeah.
Zion is coming out of the draft, and a team says, we think he is the one. We're going to offer him $25 million a year. Does Zion take it? I don't know. Maybe he says, actually, I'm going to take 14, and I'm going to go to the Knicks, or I'm going to play for Miami.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would be effective. I'd like to see if it worked, but I think you end up going down another route where bad teams are overpaying for talent. And in a system like the NBA that's cap-based, like, it gets a little tricky. If you're overpaying for non-elite talent, you're sort of doomed, as opposed to paying current cap money for elite talent is kind of the only way to win.
I mean, yeah, and I understand that logic for sure.
I'm not opposed to trying it. I'm just saying,
and also like
the effectiveness could be tempered by reality.
Elite talent, paying for it are all nebulous things like NFTs, right? Like, I would not have given Michael Porter Jr. that money. Denver had no problems. They jumped at it, I would have trouble giving Jamal Murray that kind of money. I would be more like your boy, your favorite owner, Robert Sarver, who looks at his prize center and be like, ooh, I am not 100 on this. I may be 90, I may be 95, but I'm having a little bit of, I'm a little shook, And it is not to be too hyperbolic, it's what makes everything interesting, right? Because the Nets got the players. I think they overpaid for the players, but that's the price of what that costs. That's market value. The Knicks kind of did it on a shoestring, and I would say like the Nets hammer them in any 7-game series. But like, you're getting 2 different products, and I don't think Dolan's mad at what he has right now. He doesn't have a clock hanging over his head in the same way that the Nets do. I don't believe in parity is kind of what I'm saying. I don't think you can protect teams from themselves. I think there's too many variables and too many things that happen in order to make sense of it.
Yeah, I'm not even advocating for parity. I'm saying that is something that the league wants to have, or at least wants to pretend to have, while simultaneously funneling talent into the bigger markets. And every once in a while you get a Giannis and you can point at them and say, look, they found this guy in the draft. He turned into a superstar, multiple-time MVP, finals MVP. He stayed around. Why can't you can do that? You're like, well, he's a unique case.
Oh, yeah, he is.
Because most guys would have left.
I mean,
and that's not a knock on him or guys who would leave. But most players would not have said, I'm going to stick around for the rest of my career in Milwaukee. He is a unique guy.
Yeah, he could just turn around and be like, trade me to New York. I don't think he will, but I think one of the most interesting people in the NBA has always been Sam Presti. And he's tried this multiple ways, right? He's put on many different Abraham Lincoln hats. The vampire hat, the leprechaun version maybe, the traditional cardboard version. And I remember him, I always remind myself that Paul George signed with a small market team. He stayed in Oklahoma City, and we were all delighted. We were like, see, the small markets can do that, and all you have to do is show a superstar that you're going in the right direction, and this works. And he turns around and demands a trade to LA, of all places, right? And then Westbrook's gone, and now their window slammed shut. All their all-stars were no longer in Oklahoma City, and they were wandering the barren earth as like in the afterlife and collecting these players like Josh Giddey and my guy Poku and all these interesting players now that like are kind of taking root as a basis for a new thing. And I'm surprised the league hasn't stepped in and halted their ideas of what they want to do in the future, because it might just work out.
Get Doug Moe down to OKC on the first thing smoking. And send Jerry Krause. Get all of them down there.
Yeah.
This must stop.
We cannot have this in the league. But you know what I mean?
You know, but to your point about OKC, and they're wandering the desert, and they immediately stumble across an oasis, a long cold drink of Josh Giddey.
He's fun.
Baller. Aussie ballers. Aussies are smart basketball players.
Eastern European players and Aussies are exponentially good. Like, who said recently, like, if Yugoslavia hadn't split up into a bunch of countries, that would be the hottest talent source in the world for NBA talent?
It's funny that OKC only has one win because it was over the Lakers, I believe. But also, you look at that team and they're kind of cool.
Yes.
You know, with
winning is not
SGA,
a metric right now.
Giddey,
Poku,
you know, like you got Poku, Dort,
Baisley. I mean,
they're pretty cool.
And they're stacked. They have more picks coming. Theo Maldon was like kind of interesting to me a few years ago. More picks coming. They are going through what the Sixers went through, and like, not to go back to the Sixers, but like the Sixers hit 2 superstars. Oklahoma City might not. I don't think SJ is on the level of either of the Sixers superstars. He's amazing. I really like him, but he's not as good as Simmons or Embiid. So like, shout out to a little bit of luck, but I am loving what Oklahoma City is doing, even though they have 1 win.
Yeah, I think they're doing this the right way. Whether they bungled a couple moves in the draft, that remains to be seen. Mm-hmm. But overall, like, this is an established plan that Philly did,
yep,
that the Nets did, and you know, many other teams going back throughout history of sloughing off your superstars
The Spurs
and
did
building
it.
through the draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think SGA is a really cool player.
I like him.
I don't think he's a great player yet, but he does have a really intoxicating skill set, especially optically, because he's such a modern player in his tools, and you see the things he's added to his game. You know, he has the kind of like that little crow hop James Harden step 2 times to the side and take a 3 from there. He's got handle, can get to the basket. He's just a really cool, highly polished player. I don't know that he has the impact of a true star, but he's another one of these young guys who they're so abnormally polished and good in interesting ways at an early age in their career. And, you know, we talked about Giddey. He's a really cool player, and around the league, these young guys are making it really fun. And, you know, like, you got Mobley on Cleveland, and Wagner on Orlando, and Barnes in Toronto, LaMelo.
Awesome draft. Yeah.
Just, I mean, LaMelo was last year, but just a lot of young guys in the league who are extremely skilled in a way that previous generations just kind of were not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's the influence of a bunch of things, right? Like, it's, you know, a few years ago we were trying to figure out the influence of and one mixtapes and Jordan originalism, and even amazing brands like Nike trying to formulate the way we think about these, or what these kids think about as they're coming up in AAU and what they want to be. And then, like, I think the Warriors were a very influential franchise, and their success, I think, in my opinion, we're seeing it now, not necessarily in Steph Curry, but in like Draymond Green a little bit. I think a lot of these players have a skill set that I see a lot of, like, the shadows of Lamar Odom, Draymond Green, Ben Simmons, you know, and like these kids, like, I bet you they'd be like, yo, we grew up on 21 Savage. And I'd be like, yo, that's crazy.
When you're as wizened as we are, male crones, you sometimes forget the little kind of eons, the little eras of time that when someone is 20 years old in the NBA, their frame of reference for the NBA, like when they were learning the game and falling in love with the sport and practicing and in AAU and doing drills, you're like, right, that was 5 years ago.
So Andrew Wiggins was my favorite player, man.
But it is true though, right?
Yeah,
5 years ago, well, guys like that we consider young, like the Tatums and guys like Ben Simmons and Brandon Ingram, they were in the NBA. If you were 20, it's not just that you didn't grow up on a Michael Jordan or a Kobe Bryant. You grew up on LeBron because he's been the face of the league, and I think he has created a taste for passing and seeing the floor and that kind of scorer distributor hybrid that kind of unlocked the Hardens and the Doncic's. But these kids grew up on Harden and Doncic.
Yeah.
Like, that's who they were watching in high school was Doncic. Like, it's just funny to think about it in that way.
I don't know.
They were
this for
watching Lonzo, and they were watching, Draymond Green, and the Golden State Warriors were like the formative powerhouse when they were young, and was ball movement and passing and shooting and being smart and being versatile. And I think that's really cool. And I think we're seeing some of those attributes from younger guys coming into the league that may have been not have been as prominent in sort of the life cycle of a young basketball player even 10 years ago, let alone 20.
Yeah, and this is what we talk about in the book. Time is a flat circle. It's really hard to figure out how time works as you throttle through time. And I think I've never heard him say this. I'm assuming Josh Giddey grew up watching Ben Simmons. They're both from, I think Simmons is from Melbourne, Giddey's from Melbourne. They kind of share a lot of attributes are the same. A question I have to be a skeptic of what we're talking about would be, is this just a random collection of people with a specific skill set? Is this a trend or is this an anomaly? Like, did we just get Josh Giddey and Scotty Barnes in the same draft? Because Evan Mobley is kind of a traditional hybrid big we've seen in Kevin Garnett. We've seen
pretty good passer. But I know what you're saying though.
Yeah. Did we just get a few passers?
To me, this could be the case, right? But you throw in like Tyrese Halliburton and LaMelo, and you're like, it just seems like there's more of an emphasis on
these are all
guys who
right?
have really great vision and understand like the spatial context of the court, like where players are going to move. It's like a kinesiological comprehension that a lot of guys don't have, and maybe it's also those attributes being recognized at a lower level, and those players being elevated into the kind of same LeBron paradigm, the Harden paradigm, the Luka paradigm, the Simmons paradigm, the Draymond paradigm, and that being recognized even by coaches and saying, "Oh, I know how to play this guy. He can be used as our lead ball handler, despite the fact that he's big."
Or even like the teammates know how to play with him. The fans know how to watch him. Like, this is a cultural thing, right? Like, Josh Giddey is more understood now than ever by his teammates, the fans, and the coaches. I think always understand this.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I agree with that. I think just the way that the NBA has progressed over the last decade, there's been a trickle down effect to college, to high school, to AAU, to elementary school. I would guess that most elementary school basketball coaches are paying attention to what's happening in the NBA. And no, they do not have that kind of personnel, but they're still putting those ideas into the groundwater. They still want to shoot threes and push tempo, and they're finding that one kid who has a unique passing ability, even if he's big, and saying, we're running the offense through this guy. I just think the cultural ideology of basketball has shifted a little bit away from the Jordan orthodoxy and the Kobe orthodoxy. And that's not to say there aren't those kind of players out there, because there always will be, because a lot of them are good. A lot of them are great. They're all-stars. They go on. Kawhi Leonard is one of them. But I do think we're entering sort of a period where passing, perimeter defense, and ball handling, and sort of a lot of really cool skills outside of shooting are going to be a bigger and bigger part of the NBA, especially perimeter defense, especially passing. Because once nearly everyone can shoot, once it's not hard to find a center that can shoot threes and put, 4 guys on the court at once, or 5 who are able to shoot from the perimeter, then what? Guys got to have a new skill. They got to be able to pass. They got to be able to defend. They got to be able to post up. We're just seeing the normalization of shooting as an attribute through the league. And, you look at this year's three-point shooting. It's like as low as it's been in like 20 years. Because now we're kind of reaching a point where, okay, everyone's going to be taking threes. Defenses are getting better at figuring out how to defend against it. Personnel is catching up. New foul rules matter. But I just think we're looking at a really exciting time in the NBA that we're going into, where defensive players and passers and incredibly unique ball handlers are going to be really the difference makers, along with say like a Steph Curry, who is an outlier 3-point shooter, but just being like a good 3-point shooter and not bringing much else to the table at this point. I don't really know how you're a difference maker.
Yeah, throughout civilization, whatever, there's been certain things that have pushed it to different directions, like industrialization, the nuclear bomb, bad things like AIDS and disease, the internet being the example I kind of want to think about, because I think what's happening with the NBA right now is a geometric kind of growth of what you're talking about with certain ideas, and there are better defenders and better passers and smarter players coming out into the league, but it's not taking away from Jordan originalism. Jordan originalism is more strong. It's stronger than ever. There's hero ball everywhere. I think everything is growing exponentially, and it's not an arithmetic or it's not like a finite system like the stock market, where you take something, or a better example would be wins and losses in an NBA season. Not every team can get better, because there has to be an equal number of losses, and those losses have to be doled out in the same way they're doled out every year. I don't think the NBA talent is growing that way. I think it's growing geometrically, which is multiplying in every different way. So you're getting players like Josh Giddey, and a few years ago we would have been like, well, he's like Ricky Rubio, and he's a bit of a unitasker, and he slots in as a role player. But I think we're seeing that he is an actual impact player, and these skill sets like perimeter defense and passing win games.
I guess what I'm going to say is that the joy of basketball 2, An Innocent Man, is going to be incredible. So get this one now, because it's going to be hard to understand the second one without, seeing the first. It's like Dune 2.
It's the joy of basketball 2. The husband did it, forward by Harrison Ford.
Cop that.
And for our mayor, cop that.
Cop that. Cop that.
I love cookies.
Vigilantes.
I love cookies.
Well, is this a cipher? Where am I?
All right. Cookies.
Perfect pun.